Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the It's the Pictures podcast. This is your host today, Max Colville. We're on episode 154, and today I'm joined by a guest. He's been on the show quite a few times before, and always glad to have him on again. Our good friend, Charlie Nash. Charlie, how have you been?
Hey, I've been good. Thanks again so much for having me on. Always a pleasure to talk movies with you, Max.
Yeah, and I was a guest on your podcast that you've been doing. How long have you been doing that one now? What
About
is
a
it
year
called?
and a half. It's almost major. Yeah, you were on our Open Water and Weight of Water episodes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's me and my co-hosts Kevin Tudor and Bryden Doyle, and we do mini major studios, as we like to refer to them. So studio movies released by studios that were planned to be big and weren't not. They certainly exist, but they never broke out in the way that they expected to. So our first batch of movies we did Artisan, and now we are finishing up our section on Lionsgate from the mid 90s to the early aughts. So, and then after that, we're going to do we're going back in time a little further. We're going to do 1980s and early 90s new line cinema and dive into some more unknown I almost said gems. I hope they're gems. But yeah, it's mainly genre picks that not many of us have seen at all. Usually, at least one or two of us has seen like something we're covering, but most of these are pretty unknown. I mean, there's going to be some Smithereens is one of the more well-known ones, which I haven't even seen yet, but I know quite a few people adore that film. So, it's always fun. It's always fun, even if you're revisiting something. There's been a few times where, we've covered movies that I didn't have fond memories of and appreciated a little more on a rewatch. Sometimes the opposites happen.
Yeah, no, and it's a lot of fun in general, because so much of the time podcasts like to talk about what's popular. I know, like, certainly John and I haven't shied away from that before, doing series on Fast and Furious or Mission Impossible or Lord of the Rings. And there's certainly an audience for these films that like maybe don't get mentioned on every single podcast under the sun.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's always nice to kind of do smaller little movies. There have been some movies that I barely knew anything about up until a few weeks before we covered them, which is always nice. And sometimes they can really, really surprise you. And sometimes there's reasons you haven't heard of them, but other times it is the best feeling to cover some almost like a wounded duck of a film that you find when you finally do research on it and be like, no, why hasn't anybody tried to provide some sort of awareness that this exists, so
right. Yeah. And I know even the one that I was on with you, one of the, not Open Water, but it was the other one with
The Weight of Water.
Yeah, that was, it had some interesting things in it, even if it wasn't the best movie.
Yeah, I don't think many people would say that's one of Catherine Bigelow's best films, but like you, I hadn't seen it yet and have been a Bigelow fan for years and years. And even though there were, that is far from a perfectly constructed film, just finally having a reason to, watch it and talk about it with friends in a very, in eye-opening ways, is always great. I mean, it's happened with a few films, and it's been nice, especially catching up with films by filmmakers that are really that you've known for a while. We're actually coming up. I need to watch this, but we're covering Mr. Jealousy, which is a Noah Baumbach film that I have not seen, nor have I heard much about it. So that one's coming up soon, and I have. I know it's gotten more of a mixed reception, especially compared to his more contemporary work. But yeah, always kind of exciting to just completely go in blind to something, just knowing a name attached or even no name attached, and just be like, what am I in for? So yeah.
Well, later we'll be talking about someone that Noah Baumbach knows very well.
Of course. To put it mildly.
Yes, in our Barbenheimer double feature podcast episode. We're excited for that. But before we jump into our feature, we want to talk about what is happening around Hollywood, or in this case, what's not happening around Hollywood.
Oh, Jesus. You're going to lay that at my feet?
It's the studios have forced the hands of actors and previously, as John and I talked about, writers, and have made unfair working conditions for the actors, and have made these actors and writers really force their hands to go on strike in order to get good wages and fight other issues that we're going to be talking about. I think that the writers' strike has been going on for maybe about a month and a half, I want to say. That was on behalf of the Writers Guild of America, and
I think it's even longer than that. Has it been like a couple, or
maybe it's been 2 months?
Yeah, I mean, Jesus, and good for them for sticking it out, because and I hope that now the actors are behind them, that they keep on pushing, and the actors don't have to concede in any way. But anyway, I kind of interrupted you.
No, that's fine. And as we're recording on a Sunday, I think it was just like Thursday that the Screen Actors Guild, SAG-AFTRA, decided to strike as well with their 160,000 members strong. And Charlie, what do you know about the SAG strike now? And did you know that it was happening? Did you keep up on it?
I mean, I didn't. I remember hearing rumors that the Directors Guild was also going to join the writers before the actors, and then they made some sort of deal. I remember when I learned about the actors going on strike, it was almost like immediately like there are whispers here, and I read a few pieces, including one that was from the New Yorker. I'm forgetting who wrote it, but it was an eye-opening it was a horrifying piece all about how the cast of Orange is the New Black was treated throughout that show, going back as far as when it was initially airing in 2013 and 2014, and how the cast members were basically being paid it was insulting, the minimum amount of profit they were able to make when everybody knew who these people were. And they were primarily, people of color, women of color, especially, and, gender nonconforming or trans people of color. And, it was, for such a show that seemed like such a groundbreaking hit that completely changed the way streaming and binge watching is today, especially, for a show that was, felt like it broke through a glass ceiling in many ways in terms of representation, to find out that, these hardworking actors were paid little to nothing, and even had to, bartend or, keep, work 2 or 3 jobs in order to keep a studio apartment, while, everybody at Netflix was literally bragging about them having Game of Thrones numbers, but making nowhere near the same amount of money as those actors on Game of Thrones. I remember reading that on like Wednesday or Thursday, and then by within 24 hours, they were already on strike. And I was like, good, like it's this, as, everybody's saying, it's frankly appalling and disgusting. And, these billionaires, the Bob Igers, the David Zaslavs, are absolute monsters, and they should be ashamed. Like, absolutely, but of course, when you're a billionaire, I guess you've removed that part of your brain that somehow feels shame. I can't speak for them, but that's clearly how they're behaving. And yeah, I think it's, truly abhorrent what we're learning about now, but it's, from my opinion, the best thing, possible. And in order to change the way, everybody gets their fair share, I think this is absolutely what needs to happen. There's also stuff going on with AI where you can read reports. I think I read particularly on Cruella that people are getting even extras are getting like scanned, like entirely scanned for 1 days of work, and then their bodies are basically used against their will for whenever they want, and apparently they were told that was in a contract somewhere, which is deeply horrifying and also reminds me of a very underappreciated film, The Congress, starring Robin Wright, if any of you haven't seen that, which this is basically the premise of that, although not taken, that film goes in some pretty loopy directions. The social commentary is quite potent for where we are now, and that film is 10 years old this year, I believe, and it feels all the more prescient now. So I know I just rambled on a ton, but I think good on everyone. Don't back down. Really hoping that some progress is made, and these billionaires need to, they don't need another yacht. They don't need another. They don't need another Porsche. Something needs to happen, because if this is the way the Hollywood system is run, it's just despicable. And if something needs to change or burn it all down, basically. Not to get, I guess this is like revealing a lot about where I stand politically on certain things, but that's my 2 cents. How about you?
Yeah, so I'm glad you mentioned AI, because AI has in the discussions it seemed like initially like it was like down on the list, but not entirely super high up there. But as we're learning more, there's definitely a big concern by both groups, the Writers Guild of America and SAG, about AI. And certainly, maybe a year or two ago, we might have not been as alarmist, but since January 23, with like Chat GPT and stuff like Midjourney coming out and into the hands of civilians, and people have been writing reports or writing reviews using AI, or creating their own segments and movies. Even Marvel during this strike has used AI to make the opening of Secret Invasion. We talked about that last episode, and how scary that is, and how it doesn't, like, the artists aren't necessarily going on strike because they're not, I don't think they're unionized or don't have that collective bargaining, but certainly they have a lot to be worried about.
It's deeply disturbing no matter how you spin it. And yeah, I should have mentioned that AI, with the writers, of course, they just want to make AI generated scripts. That's like, the ways people are being exploited for, this modern technology is like completely morally repugnant and deeply irresponsible on so many levels.
Well,
like,
yeah,
yeah.
I mean, Charlie, you and I have done a lot of writing, and it's just like scary that there's going to be people out there who are just made to edit AI articles. Like there will be like bots churning out articles, and then you'll sit and edit whatever the bot churned out.
I know. It's pure nightmare fuel for people who, like us, who pour our heart and soul into trying to convey exactly how we're thinking and feeling about particular art, or any type of coverage of pop culture, because it's so dear to us. It's what makes us it's what keeps us going, for pop culture nerds like us. And it's just so upsetting and feels very, it feels apocalyptic in many ways.
Right.
Not to be completely hyperbolic, but the whole thing is just, it gives me the willies, honestly.
The other thing Charlie mentioned earlier was that The Orange is the New Black cast, and there's a big argument too about compensation when it comes to streaming shows, and apparently that wasn't really discussed a lot in detail in the last contract. It seems like even if there was like some notion to include some kind of compensation, or like better compensation for these streaming shows, it seems like the studios have been like kind of living in a fantasy world of let's keep on making streaming shows and paying nobody. And
not to mention that the interviews that they have given, and of course they're too afraid to reveal their true identities because, I mean, like, the fact that you could even release this anonymously is, I don't know how you sleep at night. But, you know, someone gave an interview recently where it was just like, well, we need to, like, basically, you know, it's a necessary evil, you know, until people are, like, forced out of their homes, you know, this is what we're going to have to do. And it's like, excuse me, how you make hundreds of millions of dollars a year and you want families to starve? You know, not to completely steal from the Ron Perlman video that came out recently, but it's just like, you are like, that is pure evil. Like, it's honestly, the, you know, just learning more and more about this has been very enlightening, but also insanely depressing and nihilistic. And you know, these, you know, they're the artists, you know, maintaining their strength during such soul crushing, you know, attitudes to their craft from the people in charge who get paid the big bucks. It's just so, yeah, it makes me feel sick, frankly.
Right. And like, when you look at it and why it's important that a union works together, up until the very last second, the cast for the films of Oppenheimer and Barbie were doing press tours and promoting their movies before they launch. And certainly the top name actors on both of those movies won't necessarily, they could hold out for a good long time and not necessarily feel the pain, but it's so important that they help because even though there's actors at the very top that, you know, there's lots of actors who aren't at name recognition and that are part of SAG that they work in that union just as hard, and they are impacted by the wages and in other ways.
Yeah, I do think that the fact that they called the strike in the midst of the Oppenheimer premiere was a really, you know, I'm obviously not the first person to say this, so but it was a really smart move to have them there and then for them to learn about it mid-premiere and all leave. And yet, even some publications or media outlets like Deadline completely truncated clips of Matt Damon saying it's necessary, you know, it sucks, but it's necessary that we do this, and tried to make it seem like he was a villain. And like, look, nobody needs me to stick up for Matt Damon, but it was just like, I'm sorry. Do you think that Matt Damon's people aren't going to like see this and like get back to, like, even that was kind of scary to me to see. Like, you think you can just like truncate a movie star like Matt Damon and make it fit into your narrative because your bosses want you to write about it this way? And of course that got, you know, changed really quickly, but like, even that was alarming. Like, and I don't give about Deadline. It's just, it really does, you know, strike up that kind of like, it boils up the blood. And I mean, also, you know, I remember when, you know, just a couple months ago, Fran Drescher was being called out, who's the head of the, you know, SAG-AFTRA. She was criticized for not being vocal or, you know, hot-headed enough. And whatever feelings you have about her as a person outside of that, the speech that she gave was very appropriate and very heated and loud as it needed to be. I mean, whether that type of attitude will stick is yet to be seen, but I do think in terms of like the approach that she took to taking this step and making this announcement publicly was, you know, appropriate.
Yeah, right. And certainly no one is an angel, and people have their reservations about Fran Drescher and whether or not they agree with all her policies and ideas. But as it came for that moment, it seemed like she was geared up and ready for it. But what does this strike and the actors having the strike mean for you and what you watch on television?
Well,
movies.
Well, I mean, it will affect what, you know, we see in movies. It's going to affect everybody, of course. I mean, I am
Charlie. I was using the you as the theoretical you as the listener, not necessarily you as in Charlie. But
excuse me, Jesus, that's incredibly selfish of me.
But yes, Charlie, how will it affect you?
I'll find other stuff to watch. I mean, I have a problem with buying too much physical media, but yeah, like, I'm sorry, just, invest in physical media if the art means that much to you. Like, seems like we're in an age of streaming where physical media is more of a niche type of collecting these days. I mean, and there's just go back in time. There's so much. I watch so many movies, and there's so many movies I still haven't seen, so many big blind spots. If people are worried about new content and selfishly thinking, yeah, well, what will I watch now? There's so much stuff. Are you kidding? Go do homework. Just the slightest bit of homework, you'll find something.
Right, and so that's something we've seen thus far. Like, the late night shows have been off since the writers' strike began, and a lot of talk shows in general. But it looks like, we will start feeling some of the impacts come the fall season. A lot of the networks have tried to pivot to doing a lot more reality and game shows like they did during the last writer's strike. You'll see, some content problems, but as far as the streamers, they have like a backlog of stuff, so that won't necessarily be that much change. Maybe depending on how long the strike goes on, it depends on how long will and how much effects will be. And it's just like, it's a shame that it had to come to this, because it's like the industry did suffer through the pandemic, and they're trying to find its footing, and they can't give the writers and the actors a good contract to just make things kind of continue along. What else does it mean? It means, like, some of the films coming out in August. I read that they have pre-recorded interviews. Like, the actors had to do junkets in June, pretty much, as they were.
Are they even allowed to use those though?
Yeah, they do. They can. I read. It's like pre-recorded before they had to like add that pre-recorded before the strike or something.
Don't know how I feel about that, but whatever.
Yeah. That's probably gonna happen for the August films. We don't know yet what's going to happen come the fall festivals, or whether or not the studios have kind of like hurt the festivals and might pull their films and do other things if the stars aren't there to promote them. Yeah, I don't know. And, it does suck. But like, as I kind of repeat the mantra that they use for strikes, is that strikes are meant to be disruptive. So, yeah. I mean, I hope that the bigwig executives learn that they need writers and they need actors, and they can't just replace them all with AI and cheap wages, and this gets resolved sooner than later. I mean, I hate to see it go on for months at a time.
Yeah, but I'll take it as long as they can get whatever they deserve. I mean, I just hope that these people are compensated. It's just insane. Again, 2020 wasn't that long ago. Like, if you figured out how to keep yourself entertained when we were all stuck at home during the middle of a pandemic, and it'll be, if anything, I feel like that was, as upsetting as it is to say, kind of like, it proves that the system can, live on. If it was able to keep going during that, it will be fine if they're able to reach a fair, agreement. I think what would be more depressing than anything is if, for whatever reason, and I can't imagine that it will come to this, is that they just get screwed. But I'm not a member of either union, so just holding on hope. And these people are human beings. They don't owe. They're entertainers, but they also don't owe us anything. This is their job. This is their livelihood. This is what they wake up. This is what they yearn to do. And it's.
And Charlie, to your point earlier, you were saying invest in physical media. Yeah, people are wondering whether or not the SAG strike calls for people to like cancel their streaming accounts yet or anything, and there certainly hasn't been anything out of that from SAG-AFTRA yet. Do I know if it will come down to that? I don't know. I don't know if it like they like anybody watching it and they get the residuals that they get, or
yeah, I've been reading from other sources that do not do that until they ask you to do it. And what you can do for the time being is to either join them, if you're able to join them physically, which I know I am not able to do, but if you are able to, join them somehow, do that. Donate to various fundraisers. There are links all over the place, everywhere. If you have social media, you will be seeing people sharing links on how you can help support the writers and actors in any way, with links to, various pages. Like I from what I've been told, do not cancel your streaming services until they specifically explicitly instruct you to, because it will ultimately harm them unintentionally if just listen. It's much like they're telling their higher ups, just listen to what the best way is to support them in any way and go from there. So
all right, and I'm sure John and I will continue covering the strikes, and hopefully it's not something that we'll cover for very long. Hopefully it gets resolved quickly. Anyways, last episode, John and I mentioned a Criterion Sale happening, and indeed we're in the midst of it, right in the middle, I'd say. I've picked up some movies. I've gotten stuff like the new 4K of After Hours. I've gotten
jealous
the 4K of Branded to Kill.
Hell yeah.
And I've gotten some Blu-rays from the backlog, like the documentary Showa, the Manchurian Candidate, The Flavor of Green Tea Over Rice, and Petite Maman on Blu-ray.
Oh, nice. Those are all great picks. I don't believe I have seen, no, I have seen Flavor of Tea Green Over Rice. I got that confused with another Ozu film. That's the one where they want to buy the TV, right?
Oh, I'm not sure yet. It's a blind spot for me.
Oh, it's
great.
I love
Ozu. So.
Yeah, I need to catch up with more Ozu. That and Tokyo Story. what else can be said about Tokyo Story?
Yeah, that
masterpiece.
That and Late Spring, I just absolutely adore. So.
I haven't even seen Late Spring. That is one of my absolute biggest blind spots. So if I'm ever asking myself, what can I watch? That is one that I need to just highlight. I haven't invested in anything yet. I've been a little broke and a little busy, but I shouldn't be saying that, because there have been occasional times where I do have a Best Buy down the street where I've been trying to upgrade my 4Ks. So I haven't gotten anything from the Criterion Sale yet, but yes, the After Hours 4K I've heard is amazing. Max, have you watched it yet?
No, I got it in the mail the other day, and I saw the film when it was on Criterion Channel, I think last year, for the first time, and really enjoyed it. So I'm probably going to dig into the special features on the disc first.
I haven't seen that movie in 9 years, and I watched it with my family, weirdly enough, on a vacation, and my dad was like, this movie's great, and I, of course, was devouring whatever Scorsese I could get. And my mom and my sister, me and my dad loved it, and my mom and my sister were like, this is making us uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So I think I need to see it again, probably either by myself or with some fellow fans, because I remember, just a tinge of awkwardness just watching it. And, it's like when you watch anything with your family and it's a divided type of reception. Even if you can feel the vibe and nobody's saying it, you can just sense that not everybody's enjoying it on the same level. And if it's a first time viewing, but I've heard the 4K looks amazing. Branded to Kill, that's a gorgeous movie. I haven't seen that in ages, but I do own the Blu-ray. I would love to upgrade it to 4K if I could. In terms of 4Ks, if I do partake in the sale, After Hours I'll be definitely getting. I would love to upgrade Blowout, which, if you know me, I'm a huge De Palma stan, and I own that movie on Blu-ray. I've seen it countless times, but I've heard the 4K looks amazing. And there's also The Watermelon Woman just came out, too.
Yeah, I was looking at that.
Yeah, Cheryl Dunye's debut film, which is incredible and was so hard to find, despite being such a groundbreaking, film. Both, like the first, film to be released in by a queer woman of color in in 1996, so it was like, I mean, not ever, of course, but you know, like to get that type of distribution at that time, it's still, that's insane.
It's wild that it took that long, right, Charlie?
Right.
You think of like 1996, and you're like, that wasn't really that long ago.
No.
And you know, just all these changes happening. They certainly take far too long. But, it's exciting to see when they do happen.
Yeah, can I give a shout out to, and I hope it's not sold out anymore, but the latest purchase that I did get was Vinegar Syndrome did release a 4K of Showgirls. I don't know if have you seen Showgirls, Max?
I have not, but I bought the 4K.
I love Showgirls. It is far from a perfect movie, but its imperfections are what make it so iconic and so distinctive, and so you can't deny the power of this thing, whether you love it or hate it. I mean, I've seen it count like at least 5 times, and every time there's something that I forget about that is either confounding or beautiful or both. It's like one of the most garishly gorgeous movies you'll ever see in your life, and it's filthy and it's raunchy and it's vulgar and it's offensive and also scathing, and you know, very much a Paul Verhoeven film. And you know, I feel like some people define it as kind of an unrateable movie because, you know, there's so much going on in it. But after having read Adam Naiman's book, It Doesn't Suck, this is the first time I'd revisited it since then. And if you love movies, you will certainly get something out of Showgirls, even if you despise it. And I love that it's having its own kind of renaissance right now, especially considering how Elizabeth Berkley has now kind of, you know, at the time took the fall for everything, being pretty much an unknown star from Saved by the Bell, and that was it. And then after that, you know, her agents dropped her, and now her performance is being, you know, reevaluated, justifiably so, because I don't think anybody's ever given a performance like this ever. Like, it's just one of those, like, whether, again, you can be hot or cold on it, but you will never see a performance like the one Elizabeth Berkley gives in that film. And of course, Gina Gershon is just incredible in it. And yeah.
Well, Charlie, I think it might be sold out currently because I think Vinegar Syndrome was issuing corrected discs, because I think there was something wrong with one of the audio tracks.
There was, yeah. Which, you know, I'll replace it. I watched it and it looked fine for me, but
yeah, no, I think it's specifically audio coming.
No, and it even sounded fine. But I also, where I'm at right now, I don't have the best audio system. But no, that is a very good point that you brought up, Max. And I'm sorry, I actually forgot about that.
Yeah. But it's funny, Charlie. I wanted to share with you. I shared an image of some of these discs that I bought recently, and Showgirls was in the picture, and so was Showa. And film critic Ty Burr saw the photo, and he's like, "How about that double feature of Showa and Showgirls?" And I'm like, "That's far too long."
Yeah, I have you seen Showa? Because I haven't.
No, but like I was like, I'm a Jew, you know, I kind of have to buy this like 9-hour Holocaust documentary, even though like it doesn't sound like something that I will like firmly enjoy.
but it sounds like it's like goes beyond like just enjoyable cinema as so much as it's an important cultural document, you know.
Right.
Which, yeah, I remember I years ago got that from the library and was like, yeah, I'll get around to this, because I was living at home at the time, and you know, not as much was going on, and I was back at home with my parents, I should specify, and I was just like, you know, I'll get around to this, and I just couldn't convince myself to get around to it, no matter what was going on. So I actually think that I'm probably going to join you in buying it blindly at some point, not knowing when I'm going to be able to watch it, but knowing that when it's there for me, it will be ready, because I think, obviously, that's like, you know, something that I think I also need to, you know,
yeah, and I
experience at some point in my life.
It's not something that I feel like I necessarily need to believe that the Holocaust happened. I mean, there's so many anti-Holocaust believers now, and just like they believe that
F them.
Yeah, and I think that more it's like I just want to know the history and know just like how awful it was, and so that like we always remember it and don't let it fall by the wayside.
Yes, of course. Have you seen Come and See, Max?
No, I know that that's another devastating film, and it's on the channel that I've been intending to watch, because I know you saw it within the last few years and really was moved by it.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously different in that it's a fictional representation. It's not a documentary, but it almost feels like a documentary when you're watching it because it's that powerful. Which I highly recommend that one. And yeah, obviously would never just, like, if you're getting together with friends on a Friday night, don't just throw that on blindly and be like, let's order a pizza and, watch Come and See. But yeah, that's one of the most powerful anti-war films, and one of the most, I believe Roger Ebert said it was possibly the most effective portraits of evil he's ever seen depicted on screen, and I would have to agree with that. So
all right. Wow, we spent a lot of time on the strike and the sale, but let's get into
evil.
Yeah, let's get into some fun. I mean, Charlie, it's funny. Apparently, there's been a lot of arguments on the internet that we shouldn't be having movies about Oppenheimer and Napoleon because they were evil men. And
I'm sorry,
people were laughing.
What are we even doing? Like, I don't want to even. That's just. Let's not feed the trolls.
All right, we'll move past that and go into happiness. So July 21st was supposed to be a wonderful day for cinema at the movie theaters. Not only were you able to see the new Greta Gerwig film Barbie, which is, has been marketed everywhere. This is probably the strongest marketing campaign I've seen in a long time. Mm-hmm. It's hard to escape Barbie. And on one side, and then you had Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer, atomic bomb film, 3-hour 70mm epic, launching on the same day. The movies couldn't be more diametrically opposed to each other, but film fans have kind of latched on to that and decided it was fun to say, well, I can go for light and bubbly, and then I can go for my serious film, and I can enjoy them both. And thus, the Barbenheimer movement was born. Not the Oppen B movement. It's definitely the Barbenheimer. Mm-hmm. There's been countless fun articles debating what is the correct order to watch the movies in, if there is a correct order, or just that you can actually enjoy both films in your own time.
Do you have any preference? Are you going to see them both on opening day? Or are you going to see them separately? Are you going to prioritize one over the other? I'm curious about your take.
So I would love to take part in the meme and do a double, but I think that Barbie will be whatever random time my wife and I can get to the theater together, and Oppenheimer is 10 a.m. IMAX 70mm.
Oh my God, you're gonna wake up? Well, you're a father.
Yeah, so yeah. Because and for a lot of people doing the double, it is a lot of time in the movie theater. I know my local chain, Showcase Cinema, does 20 minutes of trailers before a movie. Mm-hmm. So Oppenheimer clocks in at 3 hours and 20 minutes. Then you gotta go sit through Barbie, which I don't know the runtime of Barbie. I have to imagine that it's over 2 hours at least. Or
is it? I would be shocked if it was over 2 hours. Really? Well, although then again, Little Women was over 2 hours, but that's also Little Women. I don't.
You don't know?
Okay. According to Google, which is never. It says, or let me just check, not just Google. According to IMDb, it is 1 hour and 54 minutes.
Okay, so then 20 minutes of trailers on top of that, so you're in the theater for 2:15.
Okay, yeah, depending on what theater you see it in. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, 3:20, 2:15, 5. You're talking almost like 5.5 hours of movies just between the two of them. So that's gonna be a big day for all the Barbie double features. But yes, I am interested in seeing both of them. I know It's funny. You talk to some people, one of my family members who I tell him about the movies, and he's like, "You're not gonna go see Barbie." And I'm like, "Yes, I am gonna go see Barbie."
Are those men that you're talking to?
Yes, I believe so.
Shocker.
And then I mentioned during the last episode, Charlie, that Shannon and I have a friendly bet that she thinks that Barbie's gonna do triple the domestic business that Oppenheimer does.
I have to agree with her.
And we'll see what happens. They are very different movies. But we'll see what ultimately happens between the two of them. Charlie, do you plan to take in both of them, neither, or both as a double feature?
I do. I mean, I will admit I'm far more interested in Barbie, mainly because I have kind of fallen off the Christopher Nolan train as of late, which is not to say he hasn't made films that I love. He has. He just hasn't moved me in a way that I've been left pretty cold. I'll just say that. I've been left colder than I wish to have been left by his movies as of late. And it's interesting considering I don't love, you tell me there's it's like everybody. You say there's a Barbie movie, I'm not like, that doesn't like pique my interest. It's like, okay, yeah, IP product, but then you mention Greta Gerwig and Margot Robbie, Jesus, not Ryan Reynolds. I hate Ryan Reynolds. Jesus, Ryan Gosling. Excuse me, I woke up from a nap like an hour and a half ago, and I'm still waking up, I guess. Yeah, like it's I'm much more intrigued by Barbie just because of just how weird it looks and the aesthetic. I mean, and I'm far, with Lady Bird and Little Women, I think Greta Gerwig's efforts as a director have been far more, have been incredibly empathetic and fresh, and heartfelt in ways that have moved me as a moviegoer and my particular taste more than what Nolan has been doing as of late. But I will say it kind of, I'm disappointed. I almost get that sense of FOMO or disappointment in my own self that I haven't loved Nolan's films as of late, because as someone who's feeling completely burned out by sequels and, Marvel, DC, what have you,
IP fueled like Super Mario.
Yeah. It just, we're starved for, big films with epic scales and a sense of scope, and people who literally make movies for seeing them in a cinema, not to stream, like, obviously you will be able to watch Oppenheimer when it's released, on whatever, however you decide
your
to watch
Nintendo
it at home.
3DS.
Yeah, exactly. Your Game Boy Color, if you want, even. I don't know. There's been people who've been hacking those to do that recently. But, I feel like Nolan, what I deeply respect about him is he's always trying to make his new films events and cinematic events, not wait till this is out, to watch it at home. But, like, this is, like, I'm trying to make, the cinema an important place for communal awe, communal excitement. And I just felt bad that he hasn't really blown me away in quite some time, because I'm happy Oppenheimer exists. I'm happy people are excited for it. At the same time, Barbie's kind of like just more appealing to me in terms of, like, everything's so bleak right now, and it just seems like such a weird turn for Gerwig to make this type of movie after her first two in a way that I'm far more intrigued by, because it doesn't look like, as you just mentioned, the Super Mario movie, or we might even get into this later, but Indiana Jones 5, like, even though it's based on a Mattel product, of course it is, it looks like it's doing something stranger and more subversive than that. For all we know, I mean, the movie's going to come out in a week. We could be proven wrong. The movie might be terrible. I hope it's not, but it looks like it's got more on its mind than these typical types of movies that are like, remember this. You remember, based on our own nostalgia. And I do, and obviously Oppenheimer is based on historical facts, a real person, you know, and everybody involved in this person's life, and the atomic bomb. So I hope I'm proven wrong by Oppenheimer. I hope that I am, not proven wrong. Because that doesn't even equate to what I was saying. I hope Oppenheimer puts me back on the Nolan train.
Yeah, for what it's worth, Charlie, and early junkets aren't normally worth much. It seems that early reports from people who have seen both Oppenheimer and Barbie have positive things to say about the movies.
Yes.
So that is exciting. I'm kind of with you though, with as far as Nolan recently and being cold. Certainly Tenet and Dunkirk made me feel that way as much as like I admired Dunkirk, and like I saw that on 70mm IMAX too. That was a cinematic event.
Yes, I did too. Yep.
I don't know if it's like something like I've really felt like revisiting.
I haven't. I saw it in theaters, and I'm glad I saw it in theaters. And I admire images of it, but. And I will also say, my roommate is a veteran, and we've had extensive talks on it, and he really hates that movie. I walked away disappointed. He really does not care for that movie at all, and everything that he felt was kind of, morally disingenuous. I kind of feel about that movie. Like, I don't know what Dunkirk really is about other than spectacle. And I mean, we were just talking about Come and See, and even Showa, where I don't love that. For me, it feels like it's only about spectacle in certain ways, and just him using time in the ways that he does, which I've appreciated in other works, just didn't really leave me with anything to walk away from or chew on, apart from just pretty much staggering images, but no real emotional heft to really supply me with anything to really feed on after I left the theater. And I agree with you. I found Tenet. I don't mind that Tenet is incomprehensible. I don't mind that Tenet makes no sense. I don't mind that Tenet is goofy. I just didn't find it to be particularly fun. I think Nolan has gone down a much more self-serious route. And if that's his example of, I just want to play with my toys, that's fine. But it seems like he's consistently telling you how important his toys are before he plays with them. And I just didn't find it to be particularly enjoyable. I know that obviously has its defenders who are like, no, it's just a ride. And I'm like, no, I'm fine with a ride. I'm fine if I can't follow it. I just found the sense of self-importance to be kind of suffocating. And that's my own read. I know a lot of other people.
And
it seems like that's a divisive read, but yeah.
I almost feel like I need to give Tenet another time. The only time that I saw it was at a drive-in because of the pandemic. I wasn't going to the theaters, and like the sound was cutting out at parts. And I'm like, I already knew that this was like a movie that's like kind of hard to understand. And I'm just like, maybe I'll watch it at home. I think I got the gist of it, so I wasn't like crazy to revisit it. But not to knock Nolan, because there are plenty of movies that I enjoy by him.
Yes.
I think that Interstellar is excellent. I know people were kind of medium on that one when it came out, but I just find it really rewatchable. Like I can put on that movie like almost any scene and just like get sucked in and watch it to the end, no matter how outrageous its final solution is. I think I just really enjoy that movie. Maybe I'm a sucker for time dilation and space, but Interstellar works for me.
It's a movie that I have not revisited since theaters, and I will say I didn't care for it then. I feel like you're right, though. People were medium on it at the time, and I feel like over time people have been like, no, this is actually pretty spectacular. And if there's any Nolan film that I was like meh on that I would probably revisit, it's that one, because of how passionate people are about that one. I weirdly get for me, it kind of felt overly sentimental in a way that I don't think Nolan is great with feelings or sentimentality, like kind of like how I didn't love, and to be fair, I haven't revisited this film in a long time, but David Fincher with Curious Case of Benjamin Button. I just don't think that Nolan is particularly prioritized with feelings in a way that is resonant to me, and it just felt a little too saccharine. At the same time, that was the first time, I think, even more so than I don't hate dark. See, you're gonna regret having me on this episode.
Yeah, because it seems pretty far back. That
I have, but not only that, but I have like galaxy brain levels of takes when it comes to Christopher Nolan, and I feel like I think I'm a crazy person because like Dark Knight Rises, I actually like more than most people, and Interstellar is, but that was like goofy and over the top, and it's a Batman movie, so it's not. I can take it less seriously, but when he wants to get personal and intimate, that's the time that it doesn't work for me. I mean, I do think, though, that, you know, you mentioned time, and I think that's what he's most interested in is time. And I think he's always got interesting ideas. He's a filmmaker who I think is always fascinated with conceptions of time, about the passing of time and how it affects people, but in broad strokes, not necessarily in intimate minuscule settings, which is interesting because I, personally speaking, Memento was a very formative film for me, and that is easily my favorite, still a 5 out of 5 for me. But I also think that what I love about Memento is it's about someone who doesn't want to deal with the passing of time and is also emotionally repressed and decides, trying to avoid spoilers for those who haven't seen it, but is someone who decides to repress those feelings in order to give himself a sense of purpose in the end, which I find to be deeply moving in a haunting way, not necessarily in a sucker punch, like stab you in the heart, twist the knife type of way, but in a way that is deeply disturbing and also very respectful in its film noir tropes. And I feel like The Dark Knight is the other one that I love, but again, it's broad and operatic and also deals with ideologies, using, you know, Batman and the Joker in ways to deal with the moralities of good and evil, and, you know, people in a post 9/11 setting.
Well, Charlie, since you brought up Batman, I had to say, like, I definitely missed Nolan's take on the universe with the new Batman film. I even if I like Rises the least out of Nolan's trilogy, he still had that he brought that bombastic cinema sense to the Batman franchise that just made it feel like so much more than what Batman could actually be.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mind the new one. I enjoy,
it's okay.
I enjoy parts of it, and like yeah, I wouldn't like not watch it, but I definitely think that for me the Nolan Batmans are way more interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also interesting that we brought up Interstellar being far more appreciated over time, where I feel like The Dark Knight Rises is gone way down over time. And I feel like maybe I respond to his Batman movies more than others because actors are able to be a little more playful in playing, you know, even though it's set in a more a more grounded universe than, say, even the Tim Burton Batmans, or certainly the Joel Schumacher Batmans when we didn't have the new one by Matt Reeves, or I should say the most recent one during the time of this recording. There's a sense of playfulness and goofiness from certain actors, especially Heath Ledger, but even, you know, Tom Hardy as Bane, that allowed a sense of levity from his more, I keep using the word self-serious, which I'm not saying that Nolan like considers himself to be the greatest filmmaker of all time, but he's always marketed as such. And then I watch his films and then I get that sense of there's not really a sense of like room to breathe in a way that I feel like even those movies provided, which is why the Dunkirks, the Tenets, the Interstellars for me just leave me feeling very even Inception, which I think Marion Cotillard's performance, that's the other thing about Nolan, not great with
not great with women. Yeah.
Not great with women, often fridging them, even in Memento, a film that I love. And I love Carrie Ann Moss in it, you know, and I think that she's honestly the secret weapon of that movie in a way that maybe he didn't even fully yeah, I'm sure he grasped it, but maybe not even until the final product. Like, that's what I respond to, is that is ultimately, without spoiling anything, Carrie-Anne Moss's story, almost as much as it is Guy Pearce's. Like, there's something about those elements that keep me at a remove with, and look, I'm not saying that I don't love filmmakers who aren't great with women, and I'm not saying that Christopher Nolan is a misogynist either by any means, but it's definitely not one of his strengths. So yeah, and the other thing that's interesting about Oppenheimer, I hope it's okay that I bring this up, this is his first R-rated film since Insomnia, I want to say.
Yeah, that's fair.
And it's also for sex, which, has he ever done sex?
I don't know.
I mean, obviously he has in real life, but like in
no, I mean, like, I think
depicting it on film, I don't even think Memento or Insomnia is depicted.
I think probably Batman Returns is sexier than anything that Dark Knight Rises tried.
Oh, Jesus Christ, are you kidding? Batman Returns is oozing with sensuality. The Batman movies he makes are essentially sexless. Most of the movies he makes are sexless, which is totally fine. He doesn't have to be interested in sex. Not every filmmaker has to do everything. But that's the one thing that does have my eyebrow raised of like, okay, let's see what this is about, I'm just all too curious.
I let you like kind of air your grievances out on Nolan. I've shared this a lot on the podcast before, that I was not a fan of Greta Gerwig's Lady Bird.
Wow. And I actually remember talking to you about this in person years ago, but I forgot about it.
Yes, I have not watched the film since I saw it in Toronto at TIFF. And I'm like, I don't know when I need to watch that again.
It goes down easier than a Nolan film, in my opinion, at least.
I'm sure. And then, like, as far as Gerwig herself goes, as an actress, I do think I enjoyed Frances Ha when I saw it. Mm-hmm. I think I found Mistress America like unbearable. That was like,
right. You hated Mistress America.
Yeah, that movie's like awful. And
oh god, we're on opposite ends of the playing field here.
Yeah, and then I like her Little Women adaptation. I think that is a really smart thing to do. I feel like a lot of people have seen or are familiar with Little Women, so that she could do that kind of like weird story format with it. It doesn't follow like the traditional movie format from like beginning to end. She kind of like jumps around.
If anything, it feels like an almost Nolan-esque structure to take on Little Women
right.
in a different time frame. Yeah,
right. And I know people who watched Little Women with me later and was like, yeah, I don't like that. It's not what I wanted the film to be. It's a new way to watch Little Women, and whereas some people might have been turned off by that, I really appreciated it. Mm-hmm. And I think, like, in a way, for those who hadn't seen Florence Pugh in other works, whether it be the horror film Midsommar or some of her earlier stuff, I don't think like by this time she had appeared in Marvel stuff, which is that is like opening the doors to who you are a millionfold. But yeah, I think she was excellent in Little Women. And,
I was just talking to my coworker about, because I work at the Coolidge Corner Theater and we're opening Barbie, and we were actually just talking about her Little Women and her and all the other versions of it. And I have to admit, I was like, the 94 version is my favorite, but it was also my first. And a coworker of mine, and this is a very good argument, said not only does she prefer the new Little Women because of the ending that Alcott wanted to provide. It gives you both endings that Alcott wanted to provide, giving you the best of both worlds, but also, as much as I love the 94 version and it is my, personal favorite, Gerwig completely does gives Amy justice and turns her not into, a quote unquote spoiled brat of what ultimately turns into kind of a villain, but does flesh her out. And if anything, going back and forth in time fleshes her out even more. So, and it allows Florence Pugh as an actress to, provide multiple layers for that character who has been disliked for decades and decades and decades. So, yeah. Have you
Yeah.
also seen Lady Macbeth? That was the first time I ever saw Florence Pugh in anything, and I feel like to this day, Lady Macbeth is a film that is not very widely seen. However, I remember seeing that at a pretty empty press screening back in 2017, I think, and it's directed by William Oldroyd, who is adapting, or did adapt, I should say, adapted Eileen, based on the Otessa Moshfegh novel that I am currently reading, actually, that is set to come out from Neon in December. I mean, supposedly. Have you seen that one, Max? Have I seen
either? No, I have not seen either yet. I do agree with you that like Lady Macbeth was the first like calling card for Florence Pugh, and like people were like, "Oh, you gotta look out for her" once they saw that movie, because she really showed a lot in it. And as far as Eileen goes, I'm looking forward to seeing it, but I have not.
Yeah, I'm about 100 pages into the book right now, and it is depressing, as you would expect, but it gets under your skin and lingers with you, even if you only read like 25 pages at a time, as I kind of have over the past few days. So,
yeah. So, and I think at the beginning of this, we got why you were excited for Barbie and maybe not so much Oppenheimer. For me, I think I'm excited about Barbie because I like Greta Gerwig's directing, even though not loving Lady Bird. I really like Little Women, and I think that she has a lot to offer behind the camera as a director, and looking forward to more of her work. I think that this movie has just like so much fuel to the fire that like it has to hit big. And I think like I read somewhere that Mattel is like, this is like the launching pad to do like a whole bunch of Mattel movies.
No, stop.
Not unlike Hasbro. So
yeah, we don't. But like that's taking away. That I know that I knew this was going to come up, but that like takes away everything that nobody's seeing Barbie because it's the Barbie movie. It's everything else. You know that's the thing that I'm a little. It's inevitable, but that's the thing is like, oh well, we just need to make products. It's like, no, it's the unique spin of a certain thing. I don't think, I mean, can I ask you, were you excited about a Barbie movie until you heard the talent involved?
No, and honestly, like even the premise of it doesn't super excite me just reading the premise on paper, because I'm like, so much of it seems like carbon copy of the Lego movie in a way. And I'm like, here was another like IP property where you're taking something like, oh yeah, here's a toy and it's gonna experience all this stuff and then it's gonna like appear in the real world. And it goes even as far as saying Will Ferrell is the villain in both of those movies.
Yeah, and it seems like he's the villain in the real world of both the Lego movie and this one, based on what footage we've seen. I mean, we don't know. But yeah, nobody's craving a Hungry Hungry Hippos movie. Nobody's craving,
They said Uno could be in the works. I'm like,
I'm sorry, Uno's a card game. That doesn't even feature. We don't have to get into it, but yeah, like again, much like, I mean, you can even bring this back to Nolan. That I think The Dark Knight was such a hit for the reasons we discussed. But then they learned the wrong lessons from it. And it's like, we need to make it dour, we need to make it grim, and it's just kind of like, no, but okay, it was dour a bit. Dark Knight it took itself seriously, but you also have the twisted genius of Heath Ledger's darkly comedic performance at the head of it, which nobody seemed to learn. Like, nobody provided a villain that had that type of nihilistic turn that targeted a lot of our post 9/11 fears, whether or not you believe it to be politically appropriate or not, or you take issues with that. That's one thing, but that's the only thing that I'm really worried about with Barbie, is that everybody takes the wrong lessons from it. But did you see the Letterboxd video it's like 15 minutes long? It's on YouTube if you want to watch it, where Greta Gerwig listed off all of her influences. And
I had read the text version, and that was pretty fun.
yeah, it's like she loves movies, and I know a lot of people are also kind of attacking her for it being like Barbie is my playtime, and people are kind of taking the cheap shots of like, oh, like does she really mean that? And I'm like, I appreciate that she's at least like taking certain movies that are not as widely seen, that are artistically important, that will reach other audiences to seek out movies that are not going to be just as easily to digest as Barbie. That it's she's got a clear love for the medium and the history of film that has gotten me excited. So
yeah, right. And I think that's what ultimately makes the film more exciting than just like, oh, it's a Barbie movie.
Nobody's clamoring for the Furby movie.
And as far as Oppenheimer, even as those last two films have left me cold, I still hope that some of my favorites of Nolan get reflected in his new work. Again, he has another A-list cast to work with. Cillian Murphy actually getting a lead role as after appearing as like a supporting actor in a lot of his films before.
He hasn't really had a lead role in a big movie like this since what? Like, I mean, it's not like, even a big...
Red Eye isn't a big movie, but like that's the one I get think of, like...
or Sunshine, which another movie that was kind of but at the time was
talked about that one recently.
Yeah. And I think I feel like I'm sorry if I came off a little negative on Nolan, and especially I do love that Cillian Murphy, who is a bit of a he's got a unique he's a unique presence as an actor, both physically and internally, in a way that is kind of unnerving. And even Nolan's cast him in more unnerving turns. I mean, even as the Scarecrow in Batman Begins, like he's always kind of frightening. Or Red Eye, as you brought up, he's the great antagonist. And here, I do like that his partnership with Cillian has gotten him to be in a starring role, especially since Cillian's getting older, which
I never saw Peaky Blinders, but I think that's what like Cillian Murphy's been up to. And
I haven't either. But I do want to reiterate that I still think Memento is like one of the that movie means so much to me. And if there's any reason that I have been harsher on Nolan, it's because he has blown my mind before, and I've just been craving that. And it's a little bit of jealousy on my end. I know there are a lot of Nolan fans who all defend even his later works that both you and I have said left us cold, but he is trying to do something different, and he does have his own distinct voice and style. Like, people might be replicating him, but they can't get that precise voice down, even when it leaves me adrift. So
and not for nothing, just like a guy who we'll talk about briefly later, and Tom Cruise, like you said, Nolan's definitely making movies for the cinemas and theaters, and it's certainly a movie to go out to see on the biggest screen possible, and that's always exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I didn't see Tenet during the pandemic, but I am fortunate enough. I work at the Coolidge Corner Theater, and I waited until we saw it on a big screen, with the best visuals and audio as possible on film. And even though I did not like that movie at all and found it absolutely exhausting, I'm glad I at least saw it in the appropriate format and could see that he's at least trying to do something original. It just didn't work for me. But, sometimes that can be important too. Sometimes seeing something that's like a big cultural touchstone for that time is important, even if you don't like it, which is another thing I think that even when I'm harsh about certain things, it's important to be truthful to yourself as a moviegoer or a film critic or what have you, to give it the best shot in the format it's expected to be seen in. And if you don't like it, well, there are other movies out there, but at least you'll have a take and you can learn something from it, even if it's not something that, personally impacted you.
Right. So thank you, Troy. That's our Barbenheimer double feature topic. We're gonna get to what we've been watching lately a little bit. But before we do, we're gonna let you know how to reach us or listen to us or read our work. Um, Again, as you know, if you've been listening, I'm Max, and you can find me on Twitter and Blue Sky at MH Colville. I am not on Threads and not on. I can't even name all the different places now. So those are the only two I'm gonna stick to now. You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple, anywhere. YouTube. The episodes get uploaded there. You can listen to. Charlie, where can people find you and your show?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned I realize now I haven't even recorded a podcast where Blue Sky or Threads has been a thing now. So that's very funny. But I like you have the same username on all three accounts. I am on Twitter and Threads and Blue Sky and Letterboxd at CTNash91. That's CTNASH 91. And if you want to listen to my own podcast, of which we've had Max on for Open Water and Weight of Water, and hopefully we'll have on again at some point, you can follow Almost Major at Almost Major on Twitter. We don't have Blue Sky or Threads yet, but you can also look up Almost Major on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get podcasts, and hopefully we're there. And yeah, thanks again for having me on, Max. This has been a blast.
Yeah, and if you haven't visited lately, I've been updating the Substack more recently. It's thepictures.substack.com, and there you'll find a ranking of the 5 Indiana Jones movies now that I've seen Dial of Destiny, and also another article recently about why is every movie in 2 parts, talking about how Spider-Verse, Mission Impossible, Dune, and even next year's Wicked are all movies in 2 parts.
Wait, Wicked's in 2 parts? I missed that.
Yeah, it's in 2 parts.
Oh, boy. Well, yeah, I'll be definitely tuning into that, Max. Not because of Wicked, just because I am also like, why? But
yes. Right. Anyways, now we'll go into what you've been watching, and I'll extend the invitation to our guest Charlie first to see if he's been watching anything that he'd like to talk about.
Well, I feel like I jumped the gun a little bit by saying Showgirls, but we don't have to get back into that. But you just mentioned Dial of Destiny.
Oh, we can both talk about them. Briefly, because I gotta save some juice for John too. So.
Yeah, of course. That's not fair. Yeah, that's not fair to John. It depressed me, man. Like I was not a fan of Dial of Destiny. And I will admit, I kind of to quote my friend Michelle O'Connell, we were in a group chat, and at one point she said, I just want to see it to say I've seen it. I don't really care. And I was kind of in a similar boat. Then I hung out with some friends who said they liked it. And another friend who was there also said they disliked it and was like, oh, am I being a grouch? Am I being a cynic? And I was like, I mean, I'll go see it. I haven't seen it yet. And she was like, yeah, I'll go see it again. And then we just kind of were like, everything we've been talking about, just with even the stuff with the writer's strike, with the de-aging and the CG, like the CGI, it's the first time Spielberg's not behind the camera. I'm not the biggest Crystal Skull fan myself, but I did revisit it like a couple years ago, and think it's far superior than a lot of other blockbusters we've been getting. This just felt to me like, we've been talking, everyone's been talking about how Disney's just been cannibalizing itself. And I feel like, even though I haven't seen everything that the original trilogy has, referenced in terms of Saturday morning serials and, all the classic films it's paying homage to, you can tell there's a love of the history of cinema. And here, this just felt to me, in the vaguest of terms, like IP. You remember this? You remember this line? You remember when Indy said this? You remember when Indy did this? You remember this song cue? And it doesn't have the same type of impact because it's not really about anything. It just felt to me like a very cheap cash grab. And you can, James Mangold, I think, has been a very competent director in the past, but the stunts are mostly gray and murky and CGI, whereas a lot of the stunts in the earlier films are practical. Even Crystal Skull had some actual stunt work and like a sense of, levity. Not as much as the original three, but I found it to be, and certain characters come back in ways that felt kind of like, remember me, or aren't you happy to see me, without any sense of weight. I think Harrison Ford is genuinely fantastic. I like that he's not tuned out. If there's one thing I will say, I don't think he's tuned out at all. I think he cares so deeply about this character that film can't even crush him. But I felt like this was just, I went in with low expectations and I still walked out feeling pretty depleted and exhausted. And also, it's the longest film by maybe 20 to 25 minutes, and there's no need, because by the time you reach the end of this film, your hand clasps on air. I don't even know why. To me, whether you liked Crystal Skull or not, it at least provides a send-off for some characters that I found to be enjoyable, and here it just felt completely inconsequential. So, curious what your take is on that, Max.
Oh, Charlie, I watched all 4 movies before seeing Dial of Destiny, and I came to the conclusion that why I like certain ones better than others, I don't think that there is a bad Indiana Jones film. And
I really wish I could be on that same page. It brings me no pleasure to be as harsh on this as you, or as harsh on this as I am. I wish I walked away.
And like
same feeling.
I actually think the Dial of Destiny is my 3rd favorite if I had to rank all 5 films.
Wow.
Yes, I don't really care too much for Temple of Doom and Crystal Skull. It has the unfortunate place of last on the list, not because it's awful, but because of some egregious things that I don't necessarily love about it.
Crystal Skull?
Yeah.
Okay.
But Dial of Destiny, I really enjoyed. I agree with you that like the CGI at the beginning felt weird, and like it's certainly, like, I was telling Shannon because she saw it with me, and I was like, why did they de-age Harrison Ford and not like de-age his voice? Because it sounded like a voice of an 80-year-old man coming out of like a 40-year-old guy, and that kind of felt a little odd. That was a choice that I probably wouldn't have made. I do like the fact that it went back to an artifact. I know a lot of people didn't like it was aliens in Crystal Skull, and this was actually like a tangible thing. I think that Phoebe Waller-Bridge does a great job. I think she's cast very well. She's probably one of my favorite heroines in the series outside of Marion.
Wow. Although I guess there's not a whole lot,
right? Yeah. There's not a lot to base off of, but
yeah,
I do like her quite a bit. And it's funny, like I was thinking, like, what could Disney have done to bring this more juice? Did Crystal Skull kill it, or is Harrison Ford too old to bring in people who don't necessarily care about Indiana Jones? Because like the box office has been disappointing, and I'm like, I don't know if they could have found someone that's more recognizable with younger audiences for Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character. Certainly that's a direction they could have gone, because I guess they misjudged how much Harrison Ford could bring in audiences still, or how much the Indiana Jones IP still meant in this age. I mean, most people will remember Crystal Skull came out almost ages ago.
15 years ago.
Yeah, that's a lifetime in movies, like
I was a junior in high school. Yeah,
right. So
and we were even having the "is he too old" conversation back then,
right? And to your point that, yeah, I believe like a lot of the stunts in this movie were assisted with CGI. Absolutely. I mean, 80-year-old Harrison Ford, maybe they didn't ask too much of him, as opposed to some of his earlier films where he was more sprightly and could do some of the stunts. I don't know if you noticed this, Charlie, but another thing we debated on was this, like, there's this henchman of Mads Mikkelsen's that like looks like unnaturally big, and we're just like, he's totally just a CGI creation that's like walking along with them.
I love that. Was another disappointing factor for me, is I love Mads Mikkelsen. I love everything he's done. I mean, Hannibal, I think, is one of the best TV shows of the past 20 years, and I didn't really get. I think his plan is interesting. I when you get to the end of this movie and you find out what his ultimate end game is, I found that to be intriguing, but then that doesn't really go anywhere. I can't.
I thought the ending itself was really cool. I mean, I won't get into it.
We can't.
That's a really cool part of this movie. But
yeah, it's also funny because I missed, and it's not even fair to pin this on Indiana Jones 5. You could even pin this on Crystal Skull to a certain extent. Indiana Jones, or Raiders of the Lost Ark and Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom were two of the films I saw in childhood that mortified the ever-living crap out of me and provided a sense of gruesome comeuppance that I missed in this one.
That's funny, because that's what John told me when we did the last episode with the 4 movies. He was like, Temple of Doom was the first one I saw, and it made me have countless nightmares.
Yes.
And he's like, that's why, like, I remember it so fondly.
It continues to traumatize generations, and I am actually, look, I have a weird indie ranking, and it's simultaneously weird and also basic, in that I love them in the order they're released. I actually prefer, Raiders is my favorite. That's not a hot take. I actually prefer Temple of Doom over Last Crusade, because I feel like Last Crusade, as much as I love it, is kind of going through the motions of Raiders as a safety precaution.
That's exactly what John said. Yes.
Yes.
He's like
John and I are on the same page. Yeah.
He's like, Last Crusade is like Raiders Redux.
It is, and I love it. But obviously there are certain things that are different, but and again, I will also, because this has also been a hot topic of debate, there are some things about Temple of Doom politically and in terms of its racial and gender dynamics that are morally indefensible. I just want to say, I will not defend certain stereotypes in that movie, nor will I defend that, Willie is a better female counterpart, or even a strong female character compared to Marion. No one can compare to Marion in the series. That's just a given. But on an aesthetic level, and maybe this is my nostalgia clouding me because I saw it when I was 12 and it thrilled me and excited me and mortified me in equal measure. I still get such a rush just watching that thing, and also knowing that Steven Spielberg and George Lucas were both going through really emotionally devastating divorces. I mean, that's all on display there. I find it a fascinating, if morally, insensitive blockbuster. Whereas I just felt like this was just kind of empty calories, and I nothing would have made me happier to have walked out with your take, Max, that it did provide you with that sense of
satisfaction.
Satisfaction. It really was, I just,
I almost like to argue too, Charlie, that like people, like maybe people's problem with Crystal Skull was like they felt like that was the last time that they were going to see Indiana Jones, and they were like just so disappointed that that's the movie it left off on, and like maybe that like this will like alleviate that a little bit. Dial of Destiny.
And I don't think Crystal Skull is perfect by any means. I definitely think that the last half, it falls apart. I mean, and I remember leaving the theater. I went with I planned a big Friday night with 10 to 12 friends. We went out to dinner, and then we went on opening night, and we all kind of left that was fine. And then the next Monday morning we were in school. We were like, I don't think we like that very much. And we all kind of were like, and then the commentary was, it was awful. And I do think that definitely plays a part, and that people don't even want to revisit it anymore. But you can't deny that Crystal Skull was an event back then.
Right, and it's still a Steven Spielberg film, so.
Yes. And you can sense his love of the characters, even if the set pieces in the story aren't that great. And even though it doesn't have what I mentioned before, even the sense of the horror elements that also, even in Last Crusade, that gets into some pretty macabre, gruesome material, that you still have Cate Blanchett hamming it the hell up as Kill Moose and Squirrel, Russian, and in a way that, as many people have pointed out now, features the same haircut as Michelle Williams's
Right.
surrogate
Yes.
mother
Yeah.
in the Fablemans, which I find to be very interesting. And I also don't even, most of the time I often get critical of the directors. I don't envy James Mangold in the slightest for having to follow up one of the most iconic franchises of all time that was, helmed by one of our greatest American filmmakers
Well,
of our time.
don't act like it was a job that like he was unfortunate to get.
No, it wasn't. It was a great, but it's
store.
also a great responsibility. And I think that no matter what, in this age of everything we were talking about in this podcast, no, you're right. He, that is a very fair point.
Poor guy. Yeah,
but at the same time, those are big shoes to fill, and I don't know if the directions that Disney wanted to take were the appropriate directions. I mean, my friend Keith Ulick even pointed out, it's funny, he mentioned this before I saw it, and then I saw the movie, where you have the Paramount logo, and not like we need to defend Paramount on any level, Jesus, but how the transition of the Paramount logo would turn into the mountain in Raiders of the Lost Ark, and then, it was part of the musical number in Temple of Doom. I can't think of Last Crusade right now, but even Crystal Skull, for whatever reason, I remember that it was like a hedgehog. It was almost a joke. And here, just sitting in a theater and seeing Disney, Lucasfilm, and then the Indiana Jones text of Disney and Lucasfilm present Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, I was immediately, from the get-go, oh no. Even that, kind of, made me go, ooh. Which, and again, I went in skeptic and I walked out skeptical. So I hope most people walk out with your attitude. It's not that I'm trying to convert people.
You have forever to watch it again once it comes out.
Really
so
do.
I'm not. So we both have mixed opinions. I'm positive mostly on Dial of Destiny. Charlie is not. As far as Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning, I'm not going to talk about too much because we're running long. I enjoyed it. It's probably right in the middle of the 7 movies for me. In terms of enjoyment, there's some really nice set pieces. There's other things that I don't quite enjoy as much. Sure, I'll get into more of that later. I'm assuming you didn't get around to that yet, Charlie?
I haven't gotten around to it yet. What's your favorite, though?
I like Ghost Protocol the best, the 4th.
Nice. I like all of them except the 3rd one.
Yeah, the 3rd one's my least favorite.
Easily.
And people are like, oh, but Philip Seymour Hoffman's awesome. Yeah, he is, but it's just like a nothing movie, I think.
No, I completely agree. I think Philip Seymour Hoffman is fantastic, but it's just... I think it's interesting to me, and I'm curious what you have to say as someone who's seen the new one, that it was such a weirdly, and I mean weirdly in a good way, auteuristic franchise where you had Brian De Palma with the first one, John Woo with the second one, J.J. Abrams with the third one, Ghost Protocol, Brad Bird, and then after 5, 6, 7, it's all Christopher McQuarrie. It's the Christopher
5, 6, 7, 8. Yes.
Yeah, 7, 8.
1 and 2. Yeah.
It's the Christopher McQuarrie Tom Cruise show, and I found it is maybe not my favorite franchise, but good lord, when I was binging it for Fallout, because I have to admit I didn't see any of them in full until Fallout came out back in what was that, 2018?
I think so.
Yeah, I found it utterly fascinating to see all these different types of filmmakers take on this genre that you can basically do anything with, you know? And I just feel like J.J. Abrams' aesthetic for the third one was really, again, kind of workmanlike and very...
So some people could say I'm crazy when I say I like 2 more than 3, because they're generally the most least favorite ones. So I'm like,
yes,
well, at least like John Woo has like you could tell that's a John Woo film. He adds all his flair, and it's, you know,
the last half hour of that thing is unabashedly John Woo bursting through Hollywood gates to make exactly the type of movie. I don't think 2 is one of the stronger installments, but it has, I will say, even having watched them around the time that Fallout came out, even the commentary around 2 has changed, I feel like, now, where people are really sticking up for 2. That makes me happy.
They weren't before.
No, not even with Fallout. I mean, the first one's probably my favorite. Not just because it's like it's the first one, because it wasn't even a franchise that I had big attachments to, but I love
You're a big Brian De Palma
I'm a big
fan,
Brian
right?
De Palma head, and I love the set pieces. I like that the stakes are set so high where they introduce an entire team at the beginning full of celebrities, and then that doesn't go the way you think it's going to without even spoiling the first one. But I do like how each segment feels a little different, but then I will say Fallout's probably my second favorite, where they did really up the ante in terms of the set pieces. And I think Macquarie, we did cover Way of the Gun on my podcast Almost Major, where he was just starting out, and I had a lot of issues with the script, but never any issues with the action directing. And I feel like his collaboration with Cruise and his skill behind the camera has really evolved. So I'm excited to see this new one, even if it is split into two. I've heard pretty good things about it. It sounds like you said you're right in the middle, right?
Yeah. It's definitely entertaining and a good movie. I just prefer some other entries a little bit more.
Does the open-endedness, as someone who hasn't seen it, kind of dilute?
No, this doesn't feel like it's leaving a crescendo off the table. It definitely feels like you could watch this movie and know that there's another one coming out, but like be pretty satisfied where this one ends. It's not like
it
leaves you like gasping for the next one. Which I know is something that some movies like to do, and certainly something that like Spider-Verse felt like. It felt like it was definitely like gearing up for like the next scene, and it was like, oh, see you next time. Where this one leaves you off where there's definitely work to be done still, but
and I haven't seen Spider-Verse yet, but it seems like this Mission Impossible with the whole part one thing, it seems like people went into it or have been going into it and continue to go into it knowing that this isn't going to be a complete story, which is also weird with this franchise because most of them feel like complete entries. I haven't seen Spider-Verse, but did you know, or did many people know that it was kind of gonna leave on a to be continued type of cliffhanger?
Well, I was very much into the marketing and everything of it, and like I knew like the subtitle of the movie was originally part one.
Mm-hmm.
It was included in the marketing, and so like I knew ahead of time that was always the plan, that this was going to be part one of two. And then like somewhere along the marketing, I guess Sony decided that wasn't good for business or something, and they just pretty much dropped that moniker and just left it as like pretending it's its own thing. But that definitely feels like it needs some more juice in there for that movie.
Interesting. I'm gonna see it. I like the first one a lot.
It's been doing great business over the summer. It's gonna be a while before it's available digitally, I think.
But at the same time, I mean, not to get into anything else, but Asteroid City just got released on digital, and I will say, as someone who works at again, the Coolidge Corner Theater, a nonprofit art house theater, the fact that it leaked on digital has in no way impacted its business theatrically, which I couldn't be more happy about. So, again, it's a different type of movie.
Well, not leaked. It actually officially released on Tuesday.
Yes.
To people who could buy it digitally. So, short windows for a lot of these movies, and movies that they expected would be longer, like The Flash, is already coming out on Tuesday on digital. So
good. Yeah, that's been one of the saddest
bombs.
Like for a multitude of reasons, but we don't have to get into
that. Thank you again, Charlie, for joining me on this episode, and I had a good time. It's always fun talking to you.
Yeah, it's always great talking to you too, Max. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, and enjoy your Barbenheimer feature, however you get to see it, whether it's a double or different days.
Thanks, you too, bud.
All right, bye.
Bye.